3 true, disturbing police horror stories. Story 1. The Silent Witness. I've been patrolling the rural outskirts of Clarkson County for about 3 years now. Most shifts are quiet, checking on closed businesses, maybe pulling over a speeding truck on Route 9. The kind of work where you start to forget why you wear a vest. Last October, dispatch sent me to investigate a wellness check at a farmhouse about 12 miles outside town. The caller was a postal worker who said mail had been piling up for over a week, and the elderly woman who lived there hadn't been seen. When I pulled up the gravel driveway, the first thing I noticed was how still everything was. No dogs barking, no lights. Just a 2-story house with peeling white paint sitting in the middle of empty fields. The mailbox was overflowing, looked like at least 10 days' worth. I knocked on the front door and called out, identifying myself. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. Walked around back and found the same thing. All the curtains were drawn. I radioed in that I'd need to make entry and went back to my cruiser for the door ram. That's when I noticed the basement window. It was one of those small ground-level windows, and it was open about 6 inches. Not broken, just open. I crouched down and shined my flashlight inside. The beam cut through the darkness and landed on concrete floor and what looked like storage boxes. I called out again through the window. Still nothing. After forcing the front door, I stepped inside and immediately hit the lights. The house was clean, almost too clean. The kitchen looked like it hadn't been used in days. No dishes, no food out, nothing in the sink. I cleared the first floor room by room, announcing myself the whole time. The stairs to the second floor creaked under my boots. 3 bedrooms and a bathroom up there. I checked the first 2 bedrooms, both empty, beds made. The 3rd bedroom door was closed. I opened it slowly. An elderly woman was sitting upright in a chair facing the window. She was perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. For a second, I thought maybe she was sleeping, but something felt wrong. "Ma'am? Ma'am, I'm with the sheriff's department." She didn't move, didn't even flinch. I walked around to face her, and that's when I saw her eyes. Open, staring straight ahead. She'd been dead for days, maybe a week. But here's what made my skin crawl. She'd been posed. Someone had sat her in that chair, dressed her in clean clothes, brushed her hair. There was even lipstick on her. Whoever did this wanted her to look presentable. I backed out of the room and called it in immediately, requesting detectives and a coroner. While I waited, I went back downstairs to make sure I hadn't missed anything. That's when I heard it. A faint scraping sound, coming from the basement. I drew my weapon and moved to the basement door in the kitchen. It was unlocked. I opened it and flipped on the light. Just a bare bulb illuminating wooden steps going down. "Police! Come out with your hands up!" The scraping stopped. I descended the stairs carefully, keeping my gun raised. When I reached the bottom, I swept the room. More storage, an old washer and dryer, some gardening tools. And then I saw the corner behind the furnace. A sleeping bag, food wrappers, empty water bottles. Someone had been living down here. That open window suddenly made sense. I checked every corner, every shadow. Whoever it was, they were gone now. But they'd been here. For days. Maybe longer. Living in this woman's basement while her body sat upstairs in that chair. The detectives later found evidence suggesting the woman had died of natural causes, heart failure. But the person in the basement had discovered her, and instead of calling anyone, they just stayed, kept living there, even took the time to stage her body like she was just resting. They never found who it was. But sometimes, when I'm on patrol late at night, I think about that sleeping bag in the corner, and I wonder how many times they went upstairs to check on her. Story 2. The repeating call. My partner Josh and I work the graveyard shift downtown. We've been riding together for about 5 years, and in that time we've seen pretty much everything, or so we thought. About 6 months ago, we started getting calls to the same address, an apartment building on Mercer Street. The calls were always the same. Loud disturbance, possible domestic situation, apartment 4B. The first time we showed up, the tenant, a guy in his late 20s named Eric, answered the door looking confused. He said he lived alone, hadn't been making any noise, and had no idea why someone would call about him. The apartment was quiet, clean, nothing out of place. We apologized for the intrusion and left. Second call came a week later. Same complaint, same address, same apartment. Eric answered again, even more confused this time. He was polite, let us look around. Again, nothing. We started to think maybe it was a neighbor with a grudge or some kind of mistake with the address. Third call came 3 days after that. This time Eric looked exhausted. He said the calls were happening to him too. He'd been getting phone calls on his cell from unknown numbers, always around 3 a.m. And when he answered, there was just breathing on the other end. We told him to document everything and consider filing a harassment report. But there wasn't much else we could do. Before we left, he said something that stuck with me. I think someone's trying to make me think I'm crazy. The calls to dispatch kept coming. Once a week, sometimes twice. Always the same complaint. Always apartment 4B. And every time we showed up, Eric looked worse, more tired, more paranoid. He started saying he'd hear footsteps in the hallway at night, that his door handle would jiggle like someone was testing it. Then one night, we got the call again. But this time it was different. The dispatcher said the caller reported hearing screaming from apartment 4B. We drove over with lights, but no sirens. And when we arrived, we could hear it from the parking lot. Someone screaming inside the building. We ran up the stairs to the 4th floor, and it was coming from 4B. Josh pounded on the door. "Police, open up!" The screaming stopped. Eric opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands were shaking. "It's not me," he said. "It's not me, I swear." We pushed past him into the apartment. And that's when we saw it. Every single wall was covered in names and dates. Hundreds of them, written in marker, pen, some scratched into the drywall itself. All the same name, Sarah Miller, and all the same date, October 14th, 2019. Eric just stood there, staring at the walls like he'd never seen them before. "I didn't write that," he whispered. "I didn't write any of that." Josh called for backup while I tried to talk to Eric, but he wasn't making sense. He kept saying he'd wake up and find new writing on the walls, that he'd tried to paint over it, but it would just reappear. That's when I noticed the closet door was cracked open. I walked over and pushed it open fully. Inside there was a woman, mid-30s, long dark hair, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up at me and smiled. "He finally sees me," she said. It was Sarah Miller. We ran her name later. She'd been reported missing in 2019 after breaking up with her boyfriend. The boyfriend was Eric. He'd been the last person to see her. But here's the thing. Eric genuinely didn't remember her. Not at first. The investigation revealed he'd had a severe psychotic break back in 2019 and had been in and out of psychiatric care. He'd blocked out entire years of his life, including his relationship with Sarah and whatever happened between them. Sarah had apparently been living in the walls of that apartment building for years, moving between units through the crawl space, watching Eric, leaving those messages, waiting for him to remember. They found evidence she'd been living in the building's infrastructure, sleeping in ventilation shafts, stealing food from other tenants. She'd been the one making the calls to dispatch, calling his phone, trying to force him to acknowledge her existence. The question no one could answer was what she wanted him to remember. Eric couldn't tell us, and Sarah wouldn't. Story 3. The Wrong House. I'm going to tell you about the worst night of my career in law enforcement, and why I still think about it every single day. It started with a burglary call. A homeowner reported someone had broken into their house on Ashland Drive while they were out at dinner. Pretty standard stuff. My partner was off that night, so I was solo. I arrived at the house around 10 p.m. The homeowner, a middle-aged man named Mr. Reeves, met me outside. He said the back door had been forced open and some valuables were missing from upstairs. He hadn't gone up there himself. He'd called us immediately. I told him to wait in his car while I cleared the house. I went in through the front door, which he'd unlocked for me. First floor was clear. Living room, kitchen, dining room. Nothing disturbed. I made my way upstairs, announcing myself loudly. 4 rooms. I checked the first 3. Empty. Some drawers had been opened. A jewelry box on the dresser was empty. Standard burglary. The 4th room was a child's bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals, a small bed with a princess comforter. The door was partially closed. I pushed it open. A man was standing in the corner with his back to me, facing the wall. He was wearing dark clothes and a backpack. "Police, let me see your hands." He didn't move. I repeated the command, louder this time, my hand on my weapon. Slowly, he raised his hands above his head, but he didn't turn around. "Turn around and face me, now." He turned, and I immediately knew something was very, very wrong. He was crying. Not just crying, sobbing. His face was pale, his eyes were wide with terror, and he was shaking violently. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't let her see me." "Don't let who see you?" "Put your hands behind your head and get on your knees." "The girl," he said, his voice breaking. "The girl in the closet." My blood went cold. I hadn't checked the closet yet. I kept my eyes and my weapon on him while I moved toward the closet door. My free hand reached for the handle. "Don't open it," the man begged. "Please, she'll know I'm here." I yanked the door open. The closet was empty. Just clothes and toys. I looked back at the man, who was now on his knees, still sobbing. "There's no one in there. You're under arrest." "She's behind you," he whispered. Every instinct told me not to turn around. But I did. Nothing was there. I called for backup and got the man in handcuffs. As I led him downstairs, he kept looking over his shoulder, muttering about the girl and how she'd been following him for 3 days. When backup arrived and we got him outside, I asked Mr. Reeves if he had a daughter. His face went white. "How did you know that?" he asked. I told him about what the suspect had said. Mr. Reeves sat down on the curb ramp and put his head in his hands. Emma died 4 years ago, he said quietly. She was 7. We kept her room exactly how it was. The suspect, we later identified him as a man named David, with a history of drug abuse and mental illness, kept insisting that a little girl had led him to that house, that she'd appeared to him 3 nights earlier and told him to come to this address, that she needed help, that someone was keeping her in that room. He described Emma perfectly. The pink pajamas she was wearing, the stuffed rabbit she was holding, even the gap in her front teeth. He had no way of knowing what she looked like. The family didn't have social media, no public photos, and he'd never been to that neighborhood before. David was charged with burglary, but he was eventually found incompetent to stand trial and was committed to a psychiatric facility. But here's what I can't explain. When we processed the scene, we found something in the backpack David had been wearing. It was a stuffed rabbit, pink, worn, missing one eye. Mr. Reeves identified it immediately. It was Emma's, the one she'd been buried with. The grave was checked. It hadn't been disturbed. To this day, no one can explain how David had that rabbit, or how he knew about Emma, or why he ended up in that specific room. I don't work night shifts anymore. Some calls you just can't come back from.